So welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. So on today, we're going to introduce you to a special guest, Paige Knapp, who is a personal trainer and health coach who helps frustrated dieters balance their hormones, get strong, and heal their gut without crazy cardio or calorie counting. Love the sound of that. She obtained the certification in personal training through the National Academy of Sports Medicine and is currently pursuing her master's in human nutrition and functional medicine at the University of Western States. So I just want to welcome, obviously, Paige to the show. It's going to be a great conversation. We're going to delve into everything to do with the gut, the brain, stress, how it all connects. So it's going to be some great insights and some powerful conversation here. So welcome to the show, Paige.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
Perfect. So just obviously before we get into everything and kind of delve deep into what you do and how you help people, let our listeners know a bit about who you are, what your background is, kind of any pivotal moments in your background, in your story that have led you to where you are now and doing what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said before we started recording here, I do have a very multifaceted story, but I know that today we really want to focus in on gut health and stress and those kinds of things. So I'm going to kind of talk about those pieces of my journey because that definitely played a role in why I'm so excited about gut health and helping clients with gut health today. So back in college, I actually originally went to school for French and political science, which is a total 180 from what I do now. But during that time, I actually ended up developing an eating disorder called orthorexia. And so it's not necessarily, it's becoming more frequently known now. It's not currently recognized in the DSM to my knowledge, but basically orthorexia is when you have an obsession about everything needing to be correct when it comes to eating and exercising. So I thought that I needed to eat a specific number of calories every single day that I kind of just made up in my head. There wasn't really any science behind that.
Yeah.
And I thought that I needed to be exercising at least once, if not twice a day. This was kind of spurred on by, I had a roommate in college who ended up being anorexic. And I definitely think that my perfectionistic tendencies kind of leaned on that and saw what she was doing and thought, oh, okay, well, I'm going to modify this and make it better. But I definitely didn't make it better. I made it worse. And so during that time in my life, I thought that I was being healthy, but I really, really wasn't. And I think that this is something that a lot of people can relate to, especially going through the stress of college. So like I said, I was exercising multiple times a day. I was eating very, very small meals, usually the same meal every single day. So I know that I would always start out with oatmeal and cinnamon and water and an apple. And, lunch would have a small salad with an RX bar and an English muffin or something. Like it was all very, very small meals. And I was on top of that, running around campus, trying to complete my double major, trying to have other hobbies, but not really succeeding because all I could really think about was food and exercise, which was ridiculous. Luckily enough for me, I ended up going and studying abroad in France, specifically in Nice, if anybody knows the area, for 6 months during my junior year in the springtime. And when I was there, I stayed in a homestay. And if anybody knows anything about staying in homestays, you basically don't have any control over any of your own habits anymore because they're kind of dictated by the family that you stay with. And in French culture, if you don't eat the food that's served to you, that is extremely rude, like absolutely extraordinarily rude. And so I had to challenge myself to start eating all of these foods that I had told myself were absolutely awful for me. So we were eating fatty cuts of meat and things with tons of butter. We always had bread at every meal. And it was all of these foods that I had told myself were unhealthy for me. But the strangest thing happened because I wasn't able to go to the gym when I was there. I could just walk around. So I was doing a lot of walking and sightseeing, and I was eating all of this food, and my body didn't explode into 100 million pounds. My gut issues that I had had completely went away because in the past, and then under eating that can actually really, really wreck your gut health. And I didn't realize that that was happening to me until I started eating more and was like, wait a minute, I'm not farting all the time. I'm not burping all the time. I have normal bowel movements again. Like everything felt better. And so when I came back to the States, I decided to look into that a little bit more. And I kind of discovered weightlifting and the idea of real nutrition, not just the
Mm.
diet nutrition that I had been sucked into. And the most interesting thing to me was with my gut health, I had been an anxious mess for the last like few years, because I was constantly not eating enough for my body. I was eating tons of low calorie diet foods and other things that I was told were healthy, but made me feel like absolute crap. But when I started eating real foods, especially in Europe, I noticed that I felt so much better. I was more energized. I was sleeping better. And that was what real health was. And it could include things like eating bread. I am not celiac, so that take that as you will. I always tell people it's like bread's not bad for you unless obviously if you have an allergy, please don't do that. But it was through kind of taking that journey and also just getting thrown into the unknown that really catalyzed me to come out of those disordered eating behaviors. And after I realized what good could come from eating better and eating real whole foods and what nutrition could really do for people, I really wanted to pursue that. So it was too late for me at the time to switch majors. I had only taken the gen ed science classes in undergrad, and I didn't want to have to completely redo my degree. So I worked in tech for a couple of years, but then I ended up moving to Iowa with my fiance so that he could pursue his PhD in clinical psychology. And when we moved here, I kind of used that move as an excuse to pivot in my career. So I had my personal training certification. So I decided I was going to do that. And then when the pandemic hit, I actually took that as an excuse to go back to school, because if I was just sitting at home, why not actually put that time to good use? And so, as you said, now in December, I will be graduating with my master's in human nutrition and functional medicine, and I will be even more equipped to help everyone deal with their gut issues, their hormone issues. I've learned so much with my time at this university, and I just can't wait to see what I can help people with.
Wow, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And congratulations in advance
Thank you.
for December. It's amazing what people do when when the pandemic hits, and some people just sit, moan and do nothing, but a lot of people like yourself go, okay, how can I better myself? How can I do something to improve or pivot or do whatever to increase my knowledge, my skill set, so I can help other people, which is amazing. And I love what you said near the beginning of your story. You said when you thought you were healthy but you weren't. I completely resonated with your story. I had the exact same kind of path, except for instead of eating not enough for my body, I was eating too much for my body. So I was the same thing as I would sacrifice socializing, going out anywhere, because all I could think of was training and eating. Training in the gym 7 days a week, sometimes twice a day, killing myself in the gym, and then eating religiously, tracking every calorie, eating boring foods every single morning. It was exactly the same thing. In between breakfast and lunch, I'd have a little snack which would be 9 boiled eggs. It'd be exactly the same every single day. I would be eating 6,000 calories a day. And it was way too much than my body needed. But again, I created that story of this is what I need. This is what I need to do the goals, where again, there was no science to back it up. It was based on my knowledge. I think, okay, so to put on weight, I need to eat more. So how much should I eat? Okay. I read something about eating 6,000 calories. Okay, I'm going to eat 6,000 calories. And I went down that same thing of sacrificing everything. I wouldn't go on holiday. I wouldn't go out anywhere. It would just be training, eating, which again, at the time I thought, I'm being extremely healthy. But I was a wreck inside. My body was just in pain. My gut was a mess. Nothing was working. I was not getting the results I wanted. So I can completely relate with what you said, your journey coming up there. It's amazing how we create these stories.
Yes. And it's super important to realize too that I love that you had the same but the opposite experience. And I think a lot of that also comes down to sex and gender differences.
Absolutely.
Women are constantly told, okay, you have to eat as little as possible. So for me, I was like, oh, I never got to the point where I was eating 1,200 calories. Thank God, because for anybody who's listening that doesn't know, that's the amount of food that a toddler needs. If you're an adult, please don't eat that much food, or at least eat that much food. For me, it was 1600. And so I was like, I'm allowed to have 1600 calories, no more, no less. And that is what I did. But for you, like that makes total sense because the muscle building, like meathead bros at the gym are like, oh,
exactly.
you have to basically breathe in protein every time you take a breath. And when you said 9 boiled eggs, I'm like, oh my God, like that made me nauseous. Like I love eggs, but not 9 of them at a time and not as a snack. Oh my God.
89 a day, you don't love eggs for very long.
No.
But and it's so true what you said. Comes down to that gender. It comes down to gender is like we are conditioned as we grow up to women should eat less and do less. They shouldn't be as strong. They shouldn't lift weights, and men should be eating lots and lifting only weight, not doing cardio. All this rubbish, and we start to again create then these falsified stories that we start to believe, and we start to adopt them. And then when we do go on holiday, we go somewhere else, we start to then, oh crap, what am I going to do? Like I can't eat my normal food, or I can't go to the gym. And when you're in a situation where you're forced to do something different from your norm, and then you start to see a different result, and you go, okay, well that's interesting, because then it changes your whole, like flips your whole perception of everything, of food, of exercise, of health on its head, and you start to question. And that's what happened with me, and obviously the same happened with you. You start to question is, okay, I don't need to be eating this much. I don't need to be training twice a day. What I was doing was actually causing a harmful effect on my body.
Correct.
And when you realize that, and you start to think, it's okay, what do I need then? And I think that's the key is what people ask is, okay, so if this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing, what should I be doing?
Right.
And what would you say to that?
Yeah. And that's something that I definitely help out my clients with. That is kind of my main passion, because I don't believe that there is one right, quote unquote, diet for anyone or for everyone. Like people will go around and say, oh, veganism's the best. No, paleo is the best. Or low carb, or low fat, whatever, like any kind of assigned name to a diet. But to me, that's not true. The best diet that for you is going to be the one that makes you feel your best. And that is it. And it can be really hard to figure that out because, like you said, you're constantly told from outside sources, like, no, this is what's best. And this comes from diet companies, like Noom and Weight Watchers. This also comes from even, honestly, medical professionals don't really know what they're talking about when it comes to diet most of the time. I don't think that many people understand that if you go and see your primary care provider in the States, they only get between, I think it's 17 and 19 hours of nutrition education in the entirety of medical school.
Yeah.
That is not enough to be well-versed in everything that is going on in the body. And that, coupled with the fact that I also believe that people's dietary needs can change over time, which is something else that people don't understand. It's like people will come to me and say, oh, well, I've always eaten like this. And it's like, okay, but even though it worked for you then, your body is not going to be the same forever. Like just because you ate something then doesn't mean it's going to agree with you now. And oftentimes the foods that you eat every single day are actually the ones that you end up developing intolerances to, which is really, really interesting. And I know has definitely happened to many of my clients in the past with things like bananas and eggs and other things that they just said, oh, I always eat this for breakfast. And then now they can't eat them anymore without having some kind of a symptom flare.
Absolutely. Mine was eggs. I developed a sensitivity to eggs. I had to cut them out completely for well over 8 months before I could introduce them back in again. But I think that's kind of an interesting subject because so many people, like you said, well, first of all, like you said, the diets, like there's no best diet. There's definitely no best diet. There's no such thing as good or bad when it comes to the world of nutrition or anything, because it's all individual and it's all about what's unique and works for you. Like you said, what makes you feel great. And same thing it comes to food is so many people are told, eat this food, it's good for you. Yeah, but it's not going to be good for everyone. It's not going to have a positive effect in the body for everyone. And when we start to get these sensitivities and these intolerances to food, the first thing we get told, okay, don't eat that food. Instead of, okay, why are we getting that intolerance in the first place? Like, look, they start to peel back those layers and start to understand, why am I intolerant to eggs or bread or wheat or gluten? And then, okay, so the question is why? Let's look at the gut.
Right.
What's happening in the gut? Okay, let's look at inflammation. Let's look at stress. like, because stress and inflammation, even while on the positive side of stress and inflammation, we wouldn't be alive today without it, because it helps us grow, helps us adapt to become more resilient to life's pressures and challenges and stresses. So we need it. But on the opposite end, when it becomes chronic, or when we're not paying attention to it, that is going to affect the function of our gut. It's going to affect how we digest food, how our gut actually takes nutrients from the food and absorbs it. And if we're in a state of chronic inflammation and stress, our body can't do that. It's everything that we put into our body, it classes as a threat. So it attacks it and wants to kill it instead of actually absorb it. So I think that's so important for people to realize, is those insensitivities and intolerances isn't because your body doesn't like that food. It's because there's something going on in your system that's not allowing your gut to digest it effectively and efficiently. So I'd love to kind of go into this and touch on that a bit more, that relationship of those sensitivities to stress.
Absolutely. And I think one of my favorite fun facts to tell people is that your gut is actually technically outside of your own body. So we basically just have a giant hole. We're kind of like human donuts, where from your mouth to your butt is just a giant hole that is supposed to be outside of your body. Obviously, you're putting things inside yourself, but like you said, you have that gut lining, and it is a 1 cell layer thick lining that is supposed to keep everything bad out of you and absorb everything good in. But obviously, that's not always going to be the case. And I loved what you said about how different stressors might affect the gut lining. One of my favorite stories to tell is about this client who became intolerant to bananas. And we think that the reason that ended up happening was because she would eat a banana every single day before her workout. And so she would eat the banana and then work out, which is good for you, but it is a stress on the body. And so the theory is that because she was stressing her body out with the banana inside her, when those banana particles kind of leaked through her gut lining and got into her blood, her immune system was already kind of in that activated state and saw the banana and was like, oh, wait, okay, I'm going to pair this stress response with seeing this banana. So now every time you eat a banana, you're going to feel sick. And so by removing them for a while, kind of like you did with eggs, and then reintroducing them, she ended up being totally fine. But it wasn't the food that was doing it to her necessarily. It's everything else. And I think the same thing can also happen with, like, if you've ever eaten a food and then gotten food poisoning from it. I know that this is a super common experience where you just can't eat that food anymore. For me, it was crab cakes. I got sick on them when I was a kid. I love them, but every time I look at a crab cake, I get a little nauseous. I'm like, I just don't want to deal with that. And so that is something too that shows like how powerful the gut brain connection can be, where you can just see a food that you know made you sick before and immediately have an aversion to it.
Absolutely. Mine was chicken Caesar salad.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I know. But yeah, even the smell to date is a bit off-putting, but completely agree with that. Like your body is so smart but if you're not listening to the signals and you're not looking after it in terms of what you're putting in, I'm not just talking about food, but the thoughts, the emotions you're feeling. Like if you're eating, you're even like when you're about to eat, if you're kind of coming in from a stressful day at work and you're about to go straight from getting into sitting down eating dinner, and you haven't processed the stresses throughout the day, and your nervous system is still in a heightened state of fight or flight, and you're about to tuck into dinner, you can guarantee you're going to have some digestive issues straight after that, because your body is not set up in the most optimal state to be able to utilize those nutrients from the food. So you're going to end up feeling bloated and heavy and gassy and all these things that people experience usually after a meal, is because you're not taking time to de-stress, to calm down and bring your nervous system back into balance again, so it allows all those inner workings of your body, all those trillions and trillions of bacteria in the gut, to do their job and break down and digest and absorb nutrients from food. Instead, your body's attacking it because you're stressed. It can't digest it, because when you're stressed, what's happening? Like the blood starts to move away from your organs, move away from your digestive system. So you're piling food in, and your body is now going on overdrive to try and digest what you put into it, when you haven't given it the right opportunity to do so, the right environment to do so. And I think it's so important for people to realize your gut has a second brain. And it's important, like it's not about, oh, okay, what goes on up here affects everything. Yeah, it does, but also the other way around affects like 95% of what happens in your gut, like those neurotransmitters that happen in the brain, they come from the gut. The signals come from the gut. So I'd love to kind of tap into that connection of how the kind of what we put into our stomach and that bacteria, that gut connection, how that affects the way we think and how it affects our brain chemistry and brain kind of what happens in our brain, really.
Yes, absolutely. So like you said, our guts do have what everyone calls the second brain, and that can also be called the enteric nervous system. So it's actually like a separate nervous system from your sympathetic parasympathetic, which is going to be controlled by your brain. It's really interesting. And there's a really cool study out there where scientists removed sections of intestine from, I believe it was guinea pigs or mice, one of them. It was a rodent, but they took the sections out and left it like it was out of the body. It was disconnected from the brain, but it was still obviously like living tissue. And they put a little piece of food in the top of it, and it actually was able to contract and like the motility still worked to get it all the way out the other end. So it's like your intestines don't need your brain to work properly, which is cool. But like you said, there's also the gut-brain axis. And this is how your gut and your brain communicate. And it's through something called the vagal nerve or vagus nerve. And that is just going to be a part of your brain that you don't really have any conscious control over. It's kind of similar to breathing when you're not thinking about it, how it just kind of happens. Similarly, that is what's controlling your digestion. You're obviously not thinking about your digestion most of the time. But your gut can talk to your brain through many different signals. So there's going to be endocrine signals, so hormones. You mentioned 95% of serotonin is actually created and stored in your gut, which is really, really cool. Then there's also going to be the immune connection that we kind of talked about already. So your gut is supposed to have a large amount of secretory IgA, which is an antibody or a cytokine that is going to signal the immune system if something's wrong. So if you do eat something contaminated with bacteria or a virus, your immune system comes to get it. Unfortunately, that also could mean you might end up with a food allergy or sensitivity to something that you really shouldn't be reacting to, but are for whatever reason. But we could branch off into an entirely different podcast on that. So I'm just going to leave that there. Okay. But the important thing to note is that even though this is a bidirectional connection, like your gut talks to your brain and your brain talks to your gut, 90% of the signals are being sent from gut to brain. Your brain isn't really telling your gut what to do. It's doing its own thing. And so even though like your perceived stress can have an effect on your gut, a lot of what you put into your body is also going to have an effect on your mood and on how you perceive things and on how everything else in your body works too, which is something that I think doesn't get enough credit and kind of is starting to now. Like people are starting to realize, oh, hey, when I eat a lot of junk food, I feel depressed the next day. Why is that? And it's like, it has a connection. Like everything is connected in that way.
Absolutely. And two things from there, like you mentioned the vagus nerve, and such an important part of the digestive system. The vagus nerve is that direct connection to the parasympathetic, that rest and digest. So if you're stressed, guess what isn't activated? Guess what isn't working? Your vagal nerve, your vagus nerve is not working effectively. So you've got to learn to calm it and slow it down to activate the vagus nerve to start to improve digestion and improve those connections between so you can't control it, but you can influence it. And this is the biggest thing is what we tell our clients is if you're at work or you're coming home from work or you're stressed to the max, someone's triggered you and you're emotional, your thoughts are going all over the place and you're about to sit down for a meal, take a couple of minutes, take some deep belly breaths and really focus on calming down and bringing yourself into that rest and digest mode. Start to really kind of switch on that vagus nerve and calm, get into that parasympathetic state, because when you're there, then when you eat, your body is in a much better state to digest the food. Whereas if you're not doing anything, you're putting food in, like we said before, you're going to create an immense amount of suffering for your digestive system, and that's going to in turn have an effect on, again, stress, anxiety, depression, on how you think and how you feel. And I think this is so important is when we're overthinking and when we feel down, we automatically go to the brain. And yes, it is important to start to understand why we think the way we think and why we feel, but it's important as well. Look at the gut. You've got to look at what you're putting inside. You've got to look at why you're feeling that way, why you're thinking that way from a digestive point of view as well, because like you said, it's all connected. And I think if we can start to see those connections, like, okay, yeah, food, when it comes to our overall health, and when I was, it's all comes down to energy, and food is energy, thoughts are energy, emotions are energy. So what you put into your body is going to have that direct influence. But if you're putting what we call, well, healthy food into your body, and it's not having the effect that it should be, that's a sign that inside there's a misalignment. Obviously within your nervous system, your sympathetic, your parasympathetic, your enteric, they're not working coherently together to do what it needs to do. So this is why we hear so many times is people go, oh, I'm eating healthy, but I still feel like crap. It's like, what would you say to them if someone comes to you and says, I'm eating healthy, I'm eating whole foods, vegetables, like organic meat, but I still feel like crap? What would you say?
This is probably the most common client that I get is, I'm doing everything right. What is wrong? I don't understand. And you can even hear in my voice, like all of the anxiety and like my shoulders raised, and everybody just gets they're so tense. Everybody is in that fight or flight, sympathetic. I'm on the run. I'm on the go. I'm constantly doing something, and I'm doing. And so to those people, I'm like, you need to learn how to be. You need to learn how to slow down. Like you said, you could have two entirely different responses to the exact same food. If one of them is you just got cut off in traffic, you're rushing home from work, you have to go to an appointment, and you're shoving food in your face while standing up in your kitchen. That is going to be a very different eating experience than not getting cut off in traffic, just, chilling out, sitting at home, taking some deep breaths, chewing your food long enough, sitting down when you're eating, not being distracted while you're eating. All of those things are going to make it easier for your body to actually digest things correctly. And you might notice, like, this is definitely the kind of client that also comes to me and thinks that they're intolerant to everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're not intolerant to everything. Humans can't survive without food. So I promise you, you're not intolerant to everything. But one of the first things we always work on is sitting down during meals, taking breaths before meals, and making sure you're chewing enough. And those three things have made such a big difference in so many of my clients' lives. And I've even had people reach out to me on Instagram because I've done a couple of posts about, like, your stomach doesn't have teeth. Chew your food. And people are like, oh my God, I decided to start counting my chews, and I chewed 30 times and I don't have a stomach ache for the first time in like my entire life that I can remember. And it's like, yeah, all you really have to do is slow down. And that doesn't mean that there's not something else going on. Cause like you said, gut bacteria is also really important. And if you have some gut dysbiosis going on, meaning that you don't have either enough or the right kinds of gut bacteria that we're supposed to have in our guts, that could definitely be playing a role. And stress is something that contributes to that. So if you're really, really stressed out, maybe you're thinking, okay, well, I've tried everything, and I've tried, chewing my food and making sure that I'm being calm, but something still is going on. And that's where you might need a little bit of help overcoming some gut dysbiosis. Because if you do have some pathogenic bacteria or not enough of the good bacteria, plus you have some leaky gut going on, those bacteria might be making compounds. They're called lipopolysaccharides is the big one. And it's just kind of an endotoxin. So it's something that your gut bacteria are going to create that then can leach out of your gut and into your bloodstream. And those things can also cross the blood-brain barrier. So they can be implicated in things like anxiety and depression as well, which is why really working on gut health is something that I think is so important for that whole body health.
Absolutely. And just 2 points from there. The first one you said about being is slowing down. And that it's funny when you say that, if you now apply that to every single area of your life, exercise, relationships, work, finances, you'll get the same result. You'll be calm, you'll be resourceful, and if everything functions, it becomes aligned in the body. So being and slowing down it applies to every single area of your life, guys. Anyone listening, it's not just for food, it's not just for eating, it's every single area that helps you to bring everything into a more calm, resourceful, balanced state. And then what you said, obviously, can then taking that into obviously the gut bacteria, that being and slowing things down helps that good bacteria in the gut to thrive better. Because when we're stressed and we're inflamed, guess what happens to the good bacteria? you get killed off.
Yeah.
So, and the pathogenic bacteria then start sending those lovely little signals up to the brain saying, basically, feed me junk, feed me sugar, feed me all the stuff that the pathogenic bacteria likes to feed on, whereas the good bacteria likes to feed on fiber. And I think this is a big thing. Is I've had this question a lot in the past from clients: is why do I need, like, what's this whole thing about fiber? I need to have fiber. Also, fiber. Why is it so important? It's because you cannot digest fiber. It's food for your good bacteria in your gut. So if you want to keep a healthy gut, fiber, which means keep your skin on your vegetables and your fruits.
Yes.
Like many people.
Everybody cuts it off, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, because people will think, oh, well, it's dirty. And I'm like, then run some water on it.
Exactly.
Like it seriously could be that simple. There's also, you can combine, I think it's like a little bit of white vinegar with water is a really good way to like make sure there's no pathogenic bacteria on what you're eating. But yeah, potato skins, apple skins, carrot skins. The carrot skins really get me. People that skin carrots, I'm like, that's all of the good fiber is on the outside of the carrot.
Exactly. And with people listening, it's just so important to remember is actually raw foods, skin on foods, fermented foods are good for your gut bacteria. It's good for the good bacteria. It feeds the good bacteria in your gut. And when it comes to good and bad, there are the good and bad bacteria in your gut, and you need both. And I think that's because I remember reading a great book called The Psychobiotic Revolution, which is all about gut health, gut bacteria, and it shows the direct connection between what, like, that gut bacteria and stress, anxiety, depression, all these things that society kind of experience all the time. And one of the, I think, big things with the gut bacteria is it was stories from the past where scientists were trying to eliminate all bad bacteria. They were doing research, and it took them a while to realize that you cannot live without the bad bacteria, the pathogenic. You need both. You need a balance in your gut. If you have, like you said, too much of one or the other, you create that dysbiosis, and that's when problems happen.
Yes, gut bacteria are very symbiotic. That's the word. It's like you need the good, and you want the good to overpower the bad. Otherwise, you're going to have some issues, like some symptoms that you don't want to deal with. But yeah, like you said, there is anywhere it's estimated between, it's like it's 10 trillion or 100 trillion. We're not entirely sure. Different microorganisms living in our gut, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's more than 10 times the cells in our human body. So we're actually more bacteria than we are human person, which is so cool. But also, like you said, there's more than 1,000 different identified species and more than 7,000 identified strains. So there are a lot, and you need that diversity in order for everything to kind of run effectively.
Exactly. It's a homeostasis within the body. It's balance. It's not one controlling the other. And I think so. Anyone listening to this, if they're kind of listening and going, "Okay, that's a lot of information. It's starting to make sense." But how do I create that homeostasis? How do I create that balance in my gut? So if I am sensitive to foods, if I'm struggling to digest food, if I'm feeling bloated all the time, it doesn't matter what I eat. It could be broccoli, it could be pizza. I get the same effect. Like, what would you say to them? What would be the first steps they could take to help to heal the gut and bring them back into balance?
That is a fantastic question. So whenever I'm going through with and trying to heal a client's gut, there are 5 R's that we focus on.
Nice.
So it's remove, replace, restore, repair, and rebalance. Rebalance is a little more like on the woo-woo side. Like you said, it has a lot more to do with rebalancing your overall life and not just your gut, but it is still an important part. So the first thing to do is remove any foods that you know for a fact are a problem for you. With many people, this ends up being gluten, dairy, and sugar are like the 3 main offenders. And this doesn't mean you have to give them up forever. This just means that you are in a very hyperreactive state right now, and taking some of that inflammation away from your gut is going to allow it to calm down enough to be able to heal, which is good. This is why I always recommend doing something like this with the help of a coach or a practitioner, because a lot of the times what I end up finding is people will start these elimination diets, feel better, but then never reintroduce anything. And then you end up going down the line and getting a bunch of nutrient deficiencies and not knowing that you're doing something potentially detrimental to yourself. Because like you said, especially for people who will go on like low FODMAP diets. So those are going to be fermentable sugars that cause a lot of bloating, flatulence in people. If you remove those, you're basically starving your entire gut microbiome, which might not be the best thing long-term. Jury's still out on how that's going to affect over time. But anyway, taking the time to remove foods that you know are going to make you feel bad are going to be the first step. Then it's replace. So you're going to want to replace nutrients and digestive enzymes. I love using digestive enzymes with clients. I think that they're extraordinarily helpful. They're just going to be some compounds that are super affordable, super easy to get, and are going to help your body break down proteins, fats, and carbs. This is a huge step for a lot of people. And just by doing this, a lot of people will realize like, oh my God, I can eat this food and not feel gross and bloated after.
Okay. Then
restore. So with this, it's going to be using prebiotics, like you said. So fibrous foods. I really love using things like chicory root, onions, garlic, like all of those things are going to be really good prebiotic foods, as well as things like cooked and cooled grains. It's actually really cool. One of my favorites is with rice, but when you cook a grain and then cool it, the structure of the carb actually changes to become a prebiotic fiber. And also to answer everyone's question, yes, you can heat it back up again. People are always like, does that mean I only have to eat cold rice? No, but cook it, cool it, and then reheat it up before you eat it. And it's going to actually be better for your gut than if you were just to eat it hot, which is kind of cool. Yeah, same thing goes with potatoes. And then probiotics, but also a giant note, because I have a whole podcast episode myself about this. Not all probiotics are created equal. And probiotics don't recolonize your gut. So if you have destroyed your gut microbiome to the point that you made a certain species go extinct, taking a probiotic isn't going to make it go and stay there again. It will be there as long as you continue to take the probiotic, but it's a total myth that people think, oh, well, I can just take probiotics for a month or two and that's going to make my gut all better. It's like, no, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So they can be helpful, but you also just want to make sure that the probiotic that you use is clinically relevant to whatever it is you're trying to do. I have one client that came to me and she showed me the probiotics she was taking, and I went through and looked at the individual strains in it. And it turns out they were clinically shown to improve prostate health. And she's a woman. So that had nothing to do with what she was trying to use it for. So it's just important to be aware there. Then the next R is repair. So repair your gut lining. For this, I love using foods like grass-fed bone broth. That's going to be wonderful. It has a ton of gelatin and collagen in it. You can also get those as supplements. And then L-glutamine is a supplement that I give all of my clients that are trying to heal their guts. It is the preferred fuel source of the enterocytes, so the cells that line your gut microbiome, and it's going to help heal them up really well. I see great results with that. And then lastly, rebalance. So rebalance your life. Stress reduction does so much. And it's amazing to me how you can be doing all of these things. Like you could take every piece of advice that I just gave you, but if you're still in a toxic job or a toxic relationship or just feeling unhappy in your own life, you might not see as good of results as if you were to actually take the time to address those things. So I usually recommend people start therapy. Honestly, I recommend therapy to everyone. I'm about to marry a future therapist. I believe in it very heavily. And I have my own therapist, and that has been grateful. Like I've been very grateful to her for all of that too. Or if you don't want to do that, like talk to a coach, talk to a friend, talk to a loved one, just talk to somebody and make the changes that you need to make in order to feel good again. And it might be hard to figure that out, but it is a very important step. That's just kind of like, it's easier said than done always when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. I love those, the 5 R's, and that's awesome. And I think anyone listening, it comes back down, like you said, that last R is get rid of you've got to find a way to de-stress and to stay in that parasympathetic state as much as possible. The only time you want to be stressed is if you're excited, you're about to do something that is exciting. Like if you're about to step on stage and talk to people, stress is okay. If you're moving country, stress is okay. If you're getting to a new relationship, stress is good. Okay, it all helps you to grow. And it's that excitable stress. But you've got to get rid of that stress that is unhealthy stress. If you're feeling triggered by people, if you're going to work with this, oh my God, I've got to go to work again. I hate my job. I hate my house. I hate my life. That stress is just going to compound and is going to affect every area of your life, including your digestion. And like you said, one thing we get clients to do as a kind of a quick win is box breathing before they eat.
Yep.
So breathing in for 4, hold for 4, breathing out for 4, hold for 4. Really breathing into the belly, and do that for just 1 minute, 2 minutes just before you eat, and you'll see a big difference on how you feel after eating. But like you said, the ultimate goal is finding out where the stress comes from in the first place, and 99.9% of the time it comes from old conditions, old patterns, old traumas from childhood growing up that we've held on to, and we've just suppressed and repressed down, and they keep coming up every time we get triggered by someone or something external. So it's definitely important is speak to a therapist, a coach, or someone to help you to really unpack that, especially if you find yourself getting triggered all the time. If you find yourself getting stressed, anxious, depressed often, you've definitely advise you go and seek help. Just reach out as that first step. But as short-term kind of like quick wins, breathing is a game changer. It's free. You have your breath all the time.
Yeah.
Just breathe slowly, breathe calm before you eat anything. Just give your digestive system a chance to absorb those nutrients. So awesome.
And another one that I love to tell people, especially if you're very stressed out before you go to sleep. So if you are like constantly just running scenarios through your head at night or thinking about all the things that you need to do, I love body scanning.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'll tell people, okay, start in your toes and just literally think to yourself, I'm relaxing my toes. I'm relaxing the tops of my feet. I'm relaxing my ankles, and move yourself up, because it's a lot easier for people to actually pull their focus on one thing instead of just saying, oh, meditate and think about nothing. It's like, oh, how? Like, there's no way that that's going to happen, and your mind wanders. So by focusing in on something and then having that progression too, like you can always find another body part going up, like you can take it as slow as you want. That can be very, very helpful for people as well.
Absolutely. Definitely. Totally agree. It's that focus that helps. And like I love what you said, there's meditate and think of nothing. It's impossible. You can't not think of nothing.
Exactly. It's like, don't think of a white elephant or whatever the stereotype is. And it's like, okay, sure.
Exactly. So find what works best for you on the short term, but long term, it's very important to really start to let go of that stress, anxiety, that unhealthy heaviness that you might be feeling that's affecting you in all areas, including your gut. And
the interesting thing here too is, because I know a lot of people listen to this and they're like, okay, well, that's easy for you to say. Your life isn't that stressful. Okay, fine, sure. I have kids. I have, a job and all of this stuff going on. It's like a lot of it too is just your perception. And there's really interesting science on this too, where like when people perceive something to be a certain way, they end up like having a different results than if they think something else. So this isn't a stress example, but there has been studies on milkshakes. And so they'll take 2 milkshakes that are exactly the same. They have the same amount of protein, sugar, or whatever in them. And they give them to one group and say, this is a healthy milkshake and it has all of the things that you need. And it's, it's amazing. And then to the other people, they say, this is a milkshake from Wendy's, like it's ice cream and whatever. And then they measure how long it takes for people's ghrelin levels, so your hunger hormone, to start spiking up again. And the people that eat the quote healthy milkshake have a longer suppression of ghrelin. So they think that it's going to keep them full for longer. They feel better after. They usually feel happier after, versus the people that drank like the Wendy's shake get hungrier way sooner. They feel like the energy crashes. But there's nothing different about the shakes. It's all about the perception. And I think a lot can be said for the same thing for any kind of stressor in everyday lives. Like you can be presented with the same situation, but if you look at it like anticipation, excitement, it's the same physiological response as if you were looking at stress and anxiety. You just have to kind of flip the way that you're thinking about it. And that could be hard. But one of the things I did personally was like, I just started laughing at myself more. Because I can remember there were a couple of times where I dropped a bowl and it broke, and I could have let that ruin my entire day. But I literally just stood there and like looked at the ground, and my oatmeal was all over the floor. And I was like, okay, I could get upset about this, but it's really funny. Like my dog ran over and started like licking up the food. And I was like, this is just, it's hilarious. Like laughing at yourself more in those kinds of situations, like it turned my whole day around. And obviously not everything is as simple as a bowl of oatmeal, but that perception shift is something that's really important. And I love working on it with my clients. We call it brain rewiring. So when you try and shift your perception over different patterns of thought that might not be serving you.
Absolutely. Perception is key. Everything in life is perception. It's our stresses, our anxieties, our struggles, our whatever it comes, is our perception of the event. And what's what I take about anyone listening is like the one thing the term I hate when coaches use and anyone else uses is we all have the same 24 hours in a day. I said, no, yeah, we all have the same 24 hours, but everyone's life is unique and different. Like for me, I say myself and my wife, we don't have kids. We don't have that responsibility. So people with kids, yes, they've got more to deal with. So they have got potential more triggers and stresses there. But like you said, it comes down to that perception. So it is understanding that when you jump straight to that, oh, you don't know, like I've got this going on, I've got this going on, it's easy for you. You're bringing that perception and creating that story, which you're trying to make yourself feel better and feel right. Okay, yeah, the reason that I feel like this is because of this. Where it's not, it's because, again, it's your perception of that. And sometimes those perceptions can come from old conditioned behaviors from years and years ago that you need to unpack. So sometimes it is as easy as just flipping it to laughing at yourself. Sometimes it does require some deep work to go deep into the root of why you're experiencing the stress and anxiety and depression in the first place, and really let go of the cause of it. So you stop getting triggered and you stop getting stressed. So perception is so key in every area of our life, from when we're born all the way to where we are now. Everything is a perception. Our reality is created by what we believe is real. When it comes to food as well, like you said about the milkshake study. So is what you believe in is what's going to create that chemical reaction in the body, and you're either going to stress yourself out or you're going to feel calm and relax and laugh about it. So you've got the choice in that. And but sometimes, depending on what's happened in your life since you were a child, that can be hard to shift that perception. And you, like you said, you might need help to do that. Whereas other people might be quite easy to say, oh, okay, I don't need to be angry about this. I can just laugh about it. Ha ha ha. Okay, I feel great. I feel better now. Awesome. So, but just knowing that anyone listening, you are an individual and you need to find what works for you. I think it's so key is don't just because someone else found it easy to shift their perception doesn't mean that you should as well. Everyone is very different. Everyone's had different upbringings, different backgrounds, different traumas that have happened to them, and trauma can be anything from minor to extreme. So but it's all trauma, all counts in terms of the nervous system. Like you said, the nervous system doesn't know the difference between stress from dropping a bowl on the floor or stress from someone shouting in your face. Stress is stress to the nervous system. So it's definitely, to anyone listening, perception is key here, but it's understanding where you are currently at when it comes to helping to shift that perception as well, and seeking help if you feel you need to. But what I would really love to touch on before we kind of wrap up is that kind of gut connection with the hormones, but specifically with women. I think so many studies and talks are done on, it's the hormones this, it's the gut this, but what we don't understand, or what doesn't get talked about a lot, is the difference between men and women, because most studies are done on men. Like nearly about 90% of studies, when it comes to anything, are done on men, because women not only have the circadian rhythm, they've got the infradian rhythm at their 28-day cycle. So and because it's more complex to try and study that, most scientists don't bother, because it's easier just to go with the circadian rhythm and men. So I'd love to kind of jump into how does the kind of gut health and stress affect women when it comes to their cycle?
Yes. So women, like you said, kind of end up getting the short end of the stick when it comes to this kind of stuff, because we do have, and men do run on a 24-hour cycle. Your testosterone is going to be highest in the morning. It lowers over the day. It'll come up a little bit again, and then it drops back off, and it just repeats over and over again. For women, like you said, that is not the case. We have a very complex hormone cycle where our luteinizing hormone, our follicular stimulating hormone, and our estrogen and progesterone are changing over time, over that 28-day or 21 to 30-ish day cycle, depending on who you're talking to. And so many different things can influence this, but stress is a huge one. And so this is part of the reason why women in particular, like my big difference between women and men is for intermittent fasting can be great for men. Absolutely fantastic. They see fantastic results with losing weight, with balancing their own hormones, reducing metabolic syndrome, all of that stuff. But for women, it is not the same thing because we are more sensitive to stress because of our hormonal fluctuations. Estrogen and progesterone are very, very sensitive when it comes to changes in cortisol. If we have heightened levels of cortisol, we are probably going to end up making less progesterone. That is because of something called it's like the pregnenolone steal, I believe. And this has to do with the way that hormones are made. So for those of you who don't know, all hormones originate from cholesterol. Your body makes it endogenously. It doesn't really have much to do with the cholesterol that you're eating. The whole don't eat eggs thing is debunked. But in the pathway of creating progesterone, first, your body has to make pregnenolone. It's called the master hormone. It's kind of like the first step that has to happen before anything else can do. When you're under a ton of stress, your body is going to shift all of that pregnenolone into cortisol instead of letting it make progesterone. Your body needs progesterone to have a healthy cycle. It needs it for stress regulation. It is the hormone that you need. It spikes super high when you get pregnant. It's to help shift your whole body's immune cycle or system profile when you get pregnant so that your body doesn't attack your unborn baby. It's really, really important to have enough around. But when you're creating a lot of cortisol, when women are under a ton of stress, that is going to interrupt their menstrual cycles as well. And so to bring it back to the intermittent fasting thing, intermittent fasting is a stress on the body. It's adding one more thing. And so oftentimes I find that women will say, oh, I feel really great. I'm intermittent fasting. But then I challenge them to do it for a while if you want. At first, you're going to be running on adrenaline, running on cortisol, you're running on stress hormones. You feel like you have a ton of energy. You're on top of the world. Your body is built to use stress hormones to get things done. But after a while, it can't do it forever. You can't run on adrenaline forever. And then you end up crashing and people feel tired. They regain the weight. They gain a bunch of belly fat. Having high amounts of cortisol actually will cause your body to store fat around your abdominals because it's trying to protect you. It's trying to protect your organs from the stress that is coming and have that extra fat around because it basically thinks you're in a famine, you're in a super stressed out state and it needs to protect itself. And so that's why I don't recommend things like that because women are so much more perceptive and affected by outside stressors. And so intermittent fasting is one of them where I'm like, women do much better when they're fed. That is the state we do best in. Men, you're the hunters, you go out and look for food for forever. You run really well on stress hormones because you do need them to go and hunt. Women are supposed to just be nourished and make babies. Not that that's the only thing we do anymore, but our physiology is attuned to that. And so for women, trying to slow down more, trying to reduce stress when you can is going to do a lot better things for your hormone health as well as your gut health. Because obviously we already touched upon when you're super stressed out, your gut health also goes to crap. So
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's for women listening, they follow advice based on like intermittent fasting or keto or this diet, that diet, because of, again, what the science shows, but the science is geared towards men, not women. So I think it's so important for any women listening. You've got to listen to your body. You've got to listen to what feels right for you, because like you said, you might try something in your ovulation phase. You might feel great. You might try the same thing in your menstrual phase and you feel absolutely shit. It's like, it's important to know that you're during that 28 days, you go through 4 phases, and those phases are gonna, you might feel like you need more calories. You might feel like you need less calories. And it's important to listen to that. It's having that same structured, I'm going to eat the same thing every single day for every single day, every week, every month is not healthy for a female. Whereas men can do it because of the circadian rhythm. It's easier for men's body to adapt to the same thing. Whereas women need that variety because based on the cycle, because of obviously, like you said, the hormone levels change at different times of the month. So what I would love to quickly ask you on is when it comes to the female cycle. What's your opinion on the cycle and taking kind of like fasting breaks to help the digestive system kind of get back into balance again?
Yes. So if you are going to do something like that, and I would actually, and this is going to sound counterintuitive to things that most people think of, when you start your period, so day 1 of your cycle, you are technically at that point the most hormonally like a man. So if you are going to do a fast break or, you know, do a 16-hour fast, do a 24-hour fast, and this is something you feel comfortable with, obviously, like if you've never done a 24-hour fast before, please don't just jump into it, because people's blood sugar will go all over the place. You can really like kind of mess up and feel pretty bad. But if this is something that, you know, you're like, I do this all the time, when should I be doing it to have it be most optimal? I would recommend during those first few days of your cycle, because at that time you have very low levels of estrogen and progesterone. You're going to be very hormonally similar to a man. And so you're probably going to get the most beneficial hormone effects from doing it at that time. That being said, I know people are always like, oh, but when I'm on my period, that's when I have all of my cravings. And that's when I want to do that. That is true for a lot of people, but also know that if you are prioritizing your health throughout your entire cycle, it doesn't have to be that way. Like you don't have to be a slave to your cravings if you are nourishing your body enough during the entirety of the cycle. But fasting can be really good if you're dealing with gut issues to an extreme degree, because it is going to give your digestive system a little break. I do want to throw in a little caveat, because I do work with a lot of people who have previous disordered eating tendencies. If you had problems restricting food in the past, you don't have to fast to heal your gut. It's not a thing. Because a lot of people come to me and be like, oh, well, I have to fast. I'm like, no, you're just afraid of eating. That is an entirely different issue that we need to tackle.
Absolutely. That could be a whole podcast on its own, really. So absolutely, a good little idea for the next one. Awesome. Perfect. So based on that, if you could give, let's just kind of keep this on the kind of female cycle, because I think the 5 hours you had have been great for everyone in terms of what a good starting point for females. So if they are experiencing kind of imbalance in their hormones and they're struggling to bring it back into balance and struggling to know what to do, like what one, if you have one piece of practical advice that someone could take away right now and start to do as a female to bring their hormones back into balance, where they should be for them, what would you recommend?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is start a magnesium supplement. Most people are deficient in magnesium. It's a mineral that was traditionally found in our soil, but over time, with all of the factory farming that goes on, it's become very depleted. And magnesium is required in almost every single enzymatic enzymatic reaction that happens in your body. It helps you create energy. It helps you create hormones. It's helping do everything. And because we don't have a lot of that, that can be really detrimental when you're creating the proper levels of hormones. And then also for things like cramping, like people always talk about menstrual cramps are the absolute worst. Making sure you have enough magnesium can really help out with that. So if you were going to take one thing away, start a magnesium supplement. I put everybody on it. It improves sleep. It'll improve cramping. It improves, depending on which kinds of magnesium you take. If you have any kind of constipation, it can also help with that. It's really just kind of not a miracle supplement, but it is something that can do a lot of good.
Have you got, would you recommend it's like not a certain brand, but like a certain kind of dosage of magnesium?
Yes. So usually first off, magnesium citrate is the one that will make you poop. So if you have issues with that, you want to be taking citrate. For people who are looking for more of like the whole body reason to take magnesium, I would recommend either magnesium chelate or magnesium glycinate. And usually between 400 and 600 milligrams a day is the optimal dose there. Personally, I do take one from, I believe it's Bioptimizers. I'm not affiliated with them. I just really like their product, and they have 7 different kinds of magnesium in there. So some of it there can work on your gut. Others of it can help with those cellular reactions. And so I just like to cover all my bases.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you. Great advice there. So anyone listening, struggling with that, get yourself some magnesium and get the right one. Get the right one for you. Very important.
Yeah. Don't just start taking 600 milligrams of magnesium citrate or you'll be on the toilet.
Definitely good advice. Awesome. So, Paige, just one last thing. Is there anything else you'd like to add to this conversation? Is there anything else you think our listeners really need to hear before we wrap everything up? Any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I would just say that if you feel like you're doing everything right and that things are still not working out for whatever reason, know that it might not be anything that you're doing and it might be outside of your control. And that's why it's really important to work with someone who knows a lot about all of these things. There are so many times in my own life too, like not necessarily with gut health, but with other areas of health where I was like, what is going on with me? I'm doing everything right. I don't understand what's happening. And by working with someone, I was able to find that out for myself. You don't have to do it alone. That's why people are out here. And don't get discouraged if you can't find the reason behind something. It's probably there. You just need to really dig in with somebody to figure it out.
Absolutely. Great final words there. And it's the same with anything in life is if you're not sure, ask for help.
Yes.
Yeah. But also don't just blindly follow anyone that's giving out advice. Always ask for help, but ask questions. Be inquisitive.
You want personalized help. You don't want to just like go and grab some cookie cutter gut health plan off the internet and think that, oh, this is going to help because you don't know why you're having it in the first place.
Exactly. Like what we do, obviously, we'll put all of your links into the show notes. So anyone listening, obviously, in the show notes, you can go and find Paige, actually see what she's up to, reach out to her if you have any questions related to your gut, your hormones, that connection to your brain, anything we've spoken about today. Already based on what we've spoken about, we could do a couple more episodes going deeper into this. It's such an expansive topic. There's so much to cover, but anyone listening, if you do have any questions on what we covered today, please reach out to us. And we've been more than happy to answer anything that you have. But thank you so much, Paige, for coming on today. It's great to have you here. It's a great conversation. I love speaking with you, and I know that anyone listening has taken away so much valuable information and some great tips as well from this. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It was a great conversation.